Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering criminal investigations target illegal DEI programs at major companies. President Trump's administration has compiled a list of 45 major corporations accused of engaging in illegal DEI practices. These companies now face lawsuits, federal investigations, and mounting legal threats. The list, which includes Amazon, Disney, McDonald's, and Starbucks, and more, was created by conservative activists and handed to Trump's Justice Department. The administration is preparing a report that could lead to further crackdowns by March 1st, which is all pursuant to an executive order from President Trump, who said to the Justice Department, "It's time to get these companies under control. I want to report by March 1st, targeting up to 9 major companies." Stephen Miller, Trump's deputy chief of staff for policy, has been a key force behind the initiative. He claims that DEI programs unlawfully discriminate against white men and Asian people and violate federal anti-discrimination laws, which of course they do. And through America First Legal, he has sued multiple companies over this and in some cases filed even more EEOC complaints. Those are federal complaints, and now with the new administration, these companies are not going to know what's hit them. Edward Blum, who led and won the Supreme Court fight to end affirmative action in college admissions, is also driving this campaign. He argues that businesses with DEI policies are exposing themselves to massive legal liabilities. The Justice Department has not ruled out criminal investigations into companies that refuse to comply. In fact, quite the opposite. Whether it's through the Justice Department's civil division or their criminal division or both, these companies are going to hear from the Justice Department. And when they get that first letter of inquiry is when they'll start to change their tune. There may be still a few companies that once they get that letter don't back down, but most companies will back down because they know in these situations, whether it's civil or criminal, when a company first gets a letter, that's when they're put on notice that they need to make a change. Several lawsuits have already been filed with allegations ranging from race-based hiring to minority-focused scholarships and gender-specific leadership initiatives, as well as gender-based affinity groups or national origin-based affinity groups with mentorship opportunities and special arrangements being made for people based on their immutable characteristics. And that's illegal. Companies are being pressured to dismantle these programs or face severe legal consequences. Anti-DEI activist Robbie Starbuck claims he has direct contact with the Trump administration officials. He's taking credit for pressuring over 15 companies, including Walmart, to roll back their diversity initiatives. Stephen Miller's organization, America First Legal, has filed over 30 complaints and lawsuits against major corporations, including legal actions against Nike, Disney, IBM, and Facebook for allegedly discriminatory hiring practices. They've also helped sue Paramount at least 3 times for race-based discrimination hiring. Many companies that receive federal contracts like Coca-Cola and PepsiCo are already scaling back DEI efforts. Trump's executive orders banning DEI in government contracts have forced them to comply. If you want to do business with the government, if you want to sell your products and services to the government, if you want to keep those contracts you have with the government, you better cut out the illegal behavior. Some companies like McDonald's have already settled lawsuits with conservative groups to avoid prolonged legal battles, or because, of course, they knew they were wrong. Others are choosing to fight back, creating a major legal showdown. Companies that attempt to roll back DEI efforts too quickly face another potential risk, alienating employees and customers. Legal experts who absolutely love illegal DEI efforts warn that trying to erase diversity policies too suddenly could lead to backlash from progressives and civil rights organizations. We see that now where there's a black group that's trying to push a boycott on Target, and you probably haven't heard about it. I haven't done a video about it because really very few people to no one is talking about it. It's not like the LGBT Pride Month Target display boycott that destroyed Target stock and lost them many, many customers. While there are progressives out there and there are race-based organizations out there and insist that companies discriminate against people based on their immutable characteristics, Americans are really not that into it. They don't like that. So unless it's the media and there's no one pushing back against them, these toxic, destructive narratives really just don't work. The public doesn't care, and it's all coming to an end. Companies caught in the conflict are trying to walk a fine line, trying to balance government pressure with their public commitment to diversity. Some are choosing to stay quiet, hoping to avoid becoming the next target. That's a very confident move you've got there, guys. The lawsuits and investigations represent a massive shift in corporate America, where DEI was widely embraced after George Floyd's death in 2020. Now, businesses are being forced to rethink or completely abandon those commitments, as they kind of do a reverse George Floyd, and go back to treating everybody like human beings as opposed to different kinds of human beings, with some people being more entitled than other people. With Trump's administration escalating its efforts, the future of corporate DEI remains at least uncertain. Companies must now decide whether to fight back or comply with the growing anti-DEI movement sweeping through Washington and the rest of the United States. And it's not just the United States. Even European companies are backing down on DEI because of what Trump is doing in the United States. European corporations, once vocal about diversity and inclusion, are now going silent on the issue. Bloomberg data reveals that DEI mentions on earnings calls have hit a 5-year low. This decline comes in the wake of President Donald Trump's executive orders targeting DEI initiatives. His influence is not just affecting American businesses, but also rippling across European firms. And keep in mind, an executive order is just a statement from the president targeting a specific action or a specific policy or an agency in the executive branch to take specific actions. It has nothing to do with creating a new law. It has nothing to do with giving it to Congress to think about. And it has nothing to do, especially, with telling Europe what to do. The President of the United States only has control over the executive branch. But when you use that power correctly, especially in line with the American spirit and the way that Americans actually feel and are and what their values are, you can have immediate effects. The Stoxx Europe 600 earnings calls show a significant drop in references to diversity, equity, and inclusion. This suggests a wide backlash against the initiatives in the business world. In the US, the trend is even more extreme. The S&P 500 companies have made 0 mentions of DEI this year. 0, as in none. This marks a stark departure from the corporate diversity pledges seen after the 2020 Black Lives Matter movement. Trump's policies are pressuring corporations to back away from DEI efforts to maintain business ties with the U.S. government. Fear of financial repercussions is driving companies to remain silent on diversity. And a lot of these companies know, because they operate their own actual companies. They look at reports, they interact with other people that actually work at these companies. They know that if you do not have people working at your organization based on merit, having an opportunity to put the effort in and to move up and get promotions and get hired in the first place, if you don't structure the organization that way, the organization collapses over friction and falls apart. Because if you hire unqualified people and then you give promotions to unqualified people, you just put people into a system that can't get the job done. And the people that can get the job done don't want to put the effort in anymore because it's not even getting rewarded when you do your work properly. Major consulting firm Accenture, Facebook, and McDonald's have already abandoned their diversity targets. JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon, who was a big supporter of DEI and diversity and promoted it and said, "Oh, it's great, we're going to keep doing it," recently has called DEI initiatives a waste of money. Goldman Sachs previously pledged not to underwrite IPOs, that is, new investment opportunities for new public companies, for all white, all male boards of directors. However, under a new climate, they've since reversed that commitment because the commitment is illegal and racist and nonsensical. Despite the growing silence, some European firms are still standing their ground. Barclays plc remains committed to increasing female representation in leadership positions. Matteo Winkler, a professor at HEC Paris, believes European companies are avoiding DEI discussions out of self-preservation. He says that European companies with U.S. government contracts are particularly susceptible to Trump's executive orders against DEI. This transatlantic tsunami of anti-DEI sentiment is forcing companies to choose between their moral commitments and financial interests, or perhaps their legal responsibilities, particularly if they want to do business in the U.S., where this kind of discrimination is clearly illegal. In the EU, in many cases, companies are just choosing to make a profit. The shift away from DEI is not happening overnight, it's been gradually building. However, the latest data suggests that corporate retreat from diversity efforts has reached a critical point. Many businesses are not openly canceling DEI policies, but are simply choosing not to discuss them anymore. This creates an illusion of neutrality while quietly diminishing diversity efforts. As the trend continues, European companies may follow U.S. companies in completely eliminating DEI programs. The long-term impact on workplace diversity will be that everyone will get a chance based on their actual merit, not their immutable characteristics. The corporate world's response to Trump's executive orders highlights the fragility of DEI commitments. What was once a public relations priority is now a business liability. Ultimately, the drastic decline in DEI mentions suggests a new corporate reality, one where diversity takes a backseat to profit and political pressure. The question remains, will this silence lead to complete erasure of DEI initiatives? The answer, of course, is yes, because there is no way you can make a legal case of any kind that companies are allowed to discriminate on the basis of their ideological vision, their political ideas, their passion to treat one race or one sexual preference or one gender different from another gender. It's as unprofessional as it is indefensible. From Bloomberg, the 45 companies on the MAGA anti-DEI hit list. Conservative activists target unlawful corporate practices. The DOJ threatens companies with criminal investigation. The government gets to benefit from the years of people working hard through journalism, through complaints, through lawsuits, through speaking out. And now the federal government can take all of this on. For President Donald Trump's operatives seeking corporate targets to investigate for illegal DEI, conservative activists have already done the legwork and drawn up a list. From Amazon.com to Yum Brands, 45 companies with a combined market value of almost $10 trillion have been attacked for their DEI efforts in the past 3 years by groups led by Stephen Miller, now the White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, and anti-affirmative action activist Edward Blum. Corporate lawyers and advisors are now poring over the list for clues as to which companies may eventually end up being investigated by the government. Corporate DEI efforts, many of which were implemented less than 5 years ago when companies responded to the death of George Floyd, are now in sharp focus as the new administration moves to dismantle DEI. The Justice Department, which is preparing a report by March 1st identifying steps to deter the use of discriminatory DEI programs in the private sector, has even threatened criminal investigations. And these kinds of corporate criminal investigations don't involve the CEO getting arrested and going to prison. Should that happen? In some cases, yeah, it probably should happen. But that's not how this works. It just means a different legal process and significant financial fines. One of Trump's initial executive orders regarding DEI asked agency heads to identify up to 9 companies or other entities that might be practicing illegal DEI. Companies spotlighted in recent lawsuits and complaints are a good indication of who they're going to go after, according to Michael Elkins, who represents businesses on employment law issues. He says, quote, they have a blueprint. Miller and Blum's groups highlighted what they described as unlawful practices at the 45 companies, including hiring based on gender or race, scholarships based on race, and funding for startups owned by underrepresented groups. Quote, this is a target-rich environment, said Blum, whose lawsuits helped convince the U.S. Supreme Court to end affirmative action in college admissions in 2023 and supercharge right-leaning groups' assault on DEI corporate America. Companies are exposing themselves to risk by keeping their DEI programs, according to Blum. Blum would not discuss whether he had direct conversations with administration officials, but he said companies should be mindful of this government and end practices that are actionable in court and unpopular and polarizing. Blum and his organization are pursuing companies including PayPal, Southwest Airlines, and last month won a settlement with McDonald's. Stephen Miller's group, America First Legal, has been the most active in its pursuit of company DEI programs that discriminate against white people. AFL has filed more than half a dozen lawsuits and more than 30 requests for federal or state investigations of complaints. While we don't always hear about them, there are multiple lawsuits pending against companies who've been using these DEI programs to discriminate. There are lawsuits against Amazon, Bally's, Expedia, IBM, Facebook, Paramount Global, PayPal, Progressive, Target, and more. And beyond that, multiple federal and state complaints against Alaska Air, Anheuser-Busch InBev, BlackRock, CrowdStrike, Dick's Sporting Goods, Hasbro, Hershey, Lyft, Major League Baseball, Mars, Mattel, McDonald's, Microsoft, Morgan Stanley, NASCAR, the NFL. And most of these cases are based on hiring or promotion opportunities based on race. Criminal investigations for major corporations are the wake-up call these guys need to eliminate their illegal DEI programs. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you. And if you want to support the channel and help me make even more videos, subscribe to the channel and become a paid member today.